Now we saw earlier that we can filter the result of our pivot table by adding one of the columns into the filter section here that then appears above the pivot table, so it acts as a top level filter. Now you can filter the data within the pivot table without having a top level filter in place. Let's take the sales data 2018 pivots file, and on the sheet pivot 2 we'll have a look at this pivot table. This is a grouping by country and summing the sales for each of the countries. Now for any column that you add in, so for example here the country, you'll get a little drop down arrow. In that drop down arrow, as well as being able to sort, which we have here, and we've seen this previously, we can do a quick filter by removing ticks from values we don't wish to see. So I could remove the tick from select all and then go back in and individually select those countries that I would wish to see. Okay, and those are the countries I see, and a little filter icon is in place. Alternatively, let's put all those back. We can do filtering by the label or by the value. The label is what we're filtering by, so in this case the country. I could come across to the label filters and choose one of these comparison options: equals, does not equal, begins with, does not begin with, all the way down to between and not between. With my countries, I could say, well, begins with, and put an S. Okay. And then I'll see all countries that begin with S. So I get Scotland, Spain, and Sweden. Again, the little filter icon's in place. If I want to see what's happening, I can hover and it tells me a label filter has been applied. Country begins with S. In the drop-down filter, I can see here there's a tick next to label filters. So that's the kind of filter is applied. And as I come across, there's then a tick against begins with. So I have indicators all over the place as to what kind of filter is being applied. The filter icon tells me there is a filter. I then come down here and see there's a tick. I then come down here and see there's a tick. So I have a begins with. I could then change that begins with if I want. Let's try D. I'm not sure if I have any countries beginning with a D. I don't, so I get an empty pivot table. So back in, label filters, and then I could choose another. If at any stage I want to remove the filters I have in place, there is a clear filter from country option here, or clear filter option here, and that will clear any label filters I have in place. And then all my countries come back. Now, as well as the label filter, I have a value filter option. And that will filter out rows of my pivot table based on the values within the sales section. Let's go for greater than. And you can see here it's choosing the sales is greater than. Let's choose 1,000. Okay. And I find that only the United Kingdom has spent more than 1,000. Perhaps we ought to change that value filter, greater than. Notice where the ticks are, and drop right down to 50. Okay. And then get a few more countries. England and United States now appear. So in my pivot table, I can filter simply by removing ticks from values I don't want, or I can go into the label filters and choose one of the many comparison options to filter by the actual text within the label, or value filter and choose again one of the many filtering comparisons to filter by the actual data that's being used. If I want to clear the filters, I clear the filter there and everything comes swimming back. Now in pivot 1, where there are a number of columns, I then go to the country drop down and choose value filters, and let's say is a greater than. I now have a choice of which of the columns to deal with. So is it the total sales, average sales, the highest sales, or the hash sales, so the number of sales. Let's go with average is greater than 5. Okay, I'm then presented with the country that has an average sale greater than $5. I can see down the average column, they all have values higher than 5. So I know there's a filter in place. I know it's a value filter. I know it's a greater than filter. What I can't see until I click is the actual value that I'm checking. And then I see once I'm in, that I'm checking the average value is greater than 5. But you see you can apply filters to any of the column values, any of the data values that you're using within your pivot table. Okay, and into the filter, clear filter to remove them. Now in pivot 3, I just wanted to show you another option. Because we're grouping down this left-hand side on date values, if I go into the filter option here, also notice there's a filter option for the columns, because we're using a data field across there. But the date one, come down to date filters. It doesn't say label filters anymore, it says date filters. And notice the pop-out is not the same. We don't have the same less than, greater than, more than, etc. We have lots of date options. Tomorrow, today, yesterday, next week, this week, last week, next month, this month, last month, next quarter, this quarter, last quarter, next year, this year, last year, year to date, all dates in the period, and you can pick a month of the year. So you have a lot of built-in date options if you're dealing with data in your pivot table, which will make life a lot easier and a lot quicker to carry out any kind of filtering that you want to take place. Maybe you're trying to summarize sales data for last month. Well, you can pull all the data into your pivot table and then come and do a filter. Date filter, last month, click, and you'll see all of last month's data. Obviously, none of these filters here will work without particular data because it's based on years and years in the past, in fact, not just this year and last year. But we could still use the between, the after, before, and the equals. So I could say before is before, and there's a little calendar option here. So any sale that is before, let's go for the end of 2014. Okay. And then we see that 2015 is filtered out. I have my little filter icon as before. I know it's a delete filter. I know it's a before date filter. And if I care to hover a little bit here, the pop-up subtitle tells me that it's a date and it's before December 31st, 2014. Just like the others, I can clear the filter and get all my data back. We can filter on any of the column values and any of the data within your pivot table to get exactly what you're trying to achieve in this particular pivot table. So it may be you only want particular countries, or it may be that you only want particular sales above a certain amount or between two values. Or in here, it might be that, like we did, we looked for those whose average sale was greater than $5. All kind of data interrogation that will help you carry out your job to a better degree.